I'm Michael Burke, and I'll be reading an excerpt from my novella, Last Sunset of a Dying Age. It is featured alongside novellas by James A. Moore and R.B. Wood in West of Hell, Weird Western Horror Stories, Book 2 in Dark Tide from Crystal Lake Publishing. Pink cottony tendrils slashed the indigo canvas, spilling orange fire across the dusky desert sky. The slap of bat wings against the cooling heat echoed in the distance, almost in time with the clop of hooves. Mick Upstill sat nervously in his saddle and spared a glance upward at the spectacle above, then quickly gazed behind him, pulling his hat low as he did. Nothing. Over the rise of dunes, he could still see the roofs of some of the taller buildings of Copper City. The brilliant sunset and stark elemental beauty of the Arizona desert before him did not register on Upstill. His attention was focused on pursuit from the town he had quickly vacated. He thought for certain that someone would be following, or at the very least, raised an alarm, but nothing. Not even a cloud of dust behind him. The tall rider yanked on the reins, bringing his mare to a stop. Upstill scratched his chin and considered what to do next. Could no one know yet? How was that possible? Concern that he maybe snatched the wrong score waggled at the back of Upstill's mind. His hand darted like a ferret to the pouch at his belly. His long fingers fondled the heavy cloth bag. The weight and metallic clinking there reassured him. Heading east would be the least expected trail, but he'd have to double back and pass Copper City again, and he dared not do that. Mexico was several days' ride to the south, but he'd stick out there like a sore thumb, being as lanky and pale as he was. Plus, he didn't know that much Spanish. He could light for the West Coast, California somewhere. Yeah, San Francisco. Upstill had heard it was a bustling city and sure to be filled with rich folks needing to be parted from their coin. He'd need to stop in Yuma on the way and get provisions for the long ride to San Francisco. Thankfully, he had enough money. Upstill fingered the money pouch once more, grinning. Yeah, Yuma was good. If he had to duck into Mexico due to pursuit, it was perfectly located. Best to get moving. It was still a few days on the trail, and a posse out of Copper City could be bearing down on him even now. Spurring his horse's flanks, Upstill headed west, a black shadow on an umber plain. Thunder rumbled in the darkening sky. Upstill urged his mount to greater speeds, checking the skies for storm clouds. Seeing nothing but deepening colors, he still worried at getting wet and redoubled his efforts. The sun's tip jutted over the horizon to his right, and Upstill felt the temperature drop. He shivered despite himself. He slowed his pace as the horse descended a small incline. It wouldn't do to be found so close outside the city because he took a spill in the dark. A terrible shriek split the desert quiet, reverberating through the shallow canyon. It was like nothing Upstill had ever heard before. He slowed his horse, searching for the source of the sound. Coyote? Had to be. They could make some downright eerie sounds. He worried somewhat about a pack of the critters. He'd hate to have to outrun them out here at night. His pulse quickened as the light continued to fade. A creaking noise carried across the sandy reach. Upstill pivoted in his saddle and saw the silhouette of a man in covered wagon on a far ridge. They looked to be headed toward Copper City. He couldn't make out any details as they were shrouded in shadow. Still, even at the distance they were, He felt the weight of the figure's gaze. It unnerved him. Curious. Upstill shrugged. The stolen loot in his purse jingled with the motion, clacking softly in the quiet. As the last echo of shifting coins dissipated, darkness swept upon him, and that same terrible shriek echoed again. His scream lingered long after the ghost of that strange cry departed. Mick Upstill should have worried about getting dead. Leland T. Meade looked up at the sound of thunder. Puzzled, he stared, because the sky outside his window was a deep blue, scattershot with the fiery colors of dusk, nary a hint of storm clouds to be seen. The rumble seemed to have come from outside the city limits, somewhere out in the desert. He stood, straightening his jacket before buttoning it, a habit he had drilled into him since a boy. Always button your jacket when standing, regardless of the number of buttons. Just never fasten the bottom button. Leland had always wondered why have a button that you never use. His father told him that the practice originated in England with one of their kings, one of the Edwards. He couldn't remember which anymore. The man was so fat that he couldn't secure his bottom button, so all the men in court followed suit in deference to the king. Leland stood, moving to the window, and gazed upon the expanse of Copper City, his kingdom. His mind drifted, floating along thoughts of deference and how most everyone here in this burgeoning town owed their livelihoods to him. There were a few holdouts, obstacles to be sure, but nothing that he couldn't handle easily enough. Copper City needed to grow. He had invested too much into this city. Are you still with us, Meade? Leland turned from his musings to face the person questioning him. The pastor, Horace Wilburn, sat rigidly in a high-backed wooden chair, swathed in the black vestments of his station beneath the light ebony cloak he always wore. His right leg crossed over the left in the appearance of relaxation. He gripped the ornate handles of each armrest with long fingers that whitened at the knuckles. I am. Leland averted his eyes from the pastor's piercing gaze, focusing on unbuttoning his jacket's top button as he resumed his seat behind the mahogany desk dominating the spacious office. The priest had an uncanny knack for making him feel awkward and unsure. I thought I heard thunder. It's a clear evening. It hasn't rained in almost 2 weeks. I'm sure it was nothing. You're probably right, Leland said, sparing another look out the window. You were saying that you had implemented plans to get a railroad line through here. Leland noted that the priest said this as a statement and not a question, as most folks would do to spur an interrupted conversation. Yes, I've spoken with the operations and real estate director of Southern Pacific, who assures me he's meeting with the owner of the railway this week. I've told him we're close to striking a deep new vein of copper in the mines and that it would be a very good idea for Southern Pacific to consider having an extension line through here. They will want to get ahead of any competitors, and the money they could bring in with investors and passengers would be a great boon as this area marks its second boom, and all of this on the cusp of a new century. Wilburn steepled his fingers. Are we ready to discover a new vein? As word gets out and prospectors set up shop, there will be more of a workforce to make that determination. So you're saying the possibility exists there is not a new vein. That could cripple Copper City. Wilburn pursed his thin lips and scratched his hook nose. A larger population here would fit in well with my plans, Meade, and I would not like to see them endangered by any sin of pride. My foreman assures me that signs are good for a fresh strike. A small lode of copper was found, and it looks to go deep. We'll have to go deeper than we have yet, but the reward would look to outweigh the risk. I distinctly hope so. A mother lode would certainly bring in potential new parishioners. Wilburn stared past Meade at the swift gathering dark. Night came up on the desert quickly. Leland leaned back in his chair. Anticipation at his city's growth swelled in his heart, overpowering the awkwardness Wilburn always instilled in him. Don't you worry, Pastor. Copper City will get its railroad, it will boom, and there will be more people here than even you will know what to do with. Wilburn rose in a fluid motion of black cloth. Indeed, there is much to be done if all this comes to pass. There are many impure sorts still in Copper City and even throughout the greater region. A large and faithful flock can only be of benefit to the good work that I do. Thank you for listening.